Okay folks, time for our annual Christmas video. Race fans who are bored with no racing, it's time to go reading. This year we've got 10 books, all new, and they're all over the map. It's Indy cars, it's sports cars, it's motorcycles, it's safety, it's characters, it's everything you'd ever want. And we're going to start with a book I've read twice already, The Race to Make the Race. Greg Littleton has documented qualifying at Indy from 1954 to 1963. And there are so many cool stories in this book that have never been told. He got Bob Laycock's notes, the longtime guy that used to take care of the press room with Bill York at the Speedway, all the notes from qualifying and all the crazy stories. And you cannot believe, I mean, Chuck Wyatt, getting ready to go home. He's got his street clothes on. 6:15, a guy runs in and says, "Chuck, there's a car on the line. The guy wants you to drive it." He sprints out to the pits in his street clothes, jumps in the car, puts his helmet on, never been in the car, no practice laps, puts it in the show. That's why we fell for bump day. That's why we fell for the Indy 500 qualifying when there were 50 or 60 cars going for 33 spots. And the Chuck Wyatt story was just one of the great stories that Greg has put in this book, and I've read it twice. And believe me, if you like Indianapolis and qualifying and the intrigue and the drama, this is what you want to buy. And you go to, that's right, IndyRoadsters@gmail.com. That's how you can sign on to IndyRoadsters@gmail.com is how you can get this book from Greg. Or Marie Hall in downtown Speedway has it at her shop, her gift shop. She's also going to carry it. So, The Race to Make the Race, when it really meant something. Now we're going to go to our buddies at coastal181.com. They carry just about every kind of racing book you can have, and everybody's ever written a book, Coastal 181's the place they go. It's Lou Boyd and the folks. They do a great job. Well, the first one, the latest one off the presses, is our buddy Dave Argabright did a story about the life of Jimmy Sills. And the name of the book is Life with Luke. And the great thing about it is, Luke, you're thinking, Luke, what the hell has that got to do with it? Well, it's a long story, but Sills was trying to keep his identity quiet one night, so he's running a midget, and he told the announcer and the people that he signed in his name was Luke Warmwater. So, Life with Luke is a look at Jimmy Sills' career. And if you know Jimmy, hell of a sprint car racer for years, Silver Crown, you name it, he did it, champion, and probably one of the world's nicest guys. And Argabright's really captured his spirit and how much fun racing was when he was doing it. And I kind of like him as Jimmy Sills, but I can see him as Luke Warmwater, I really can. That's coastal181.com. I like him as Jimmy Sills or Luke Warmwater, but I think this kind of illustrates, this whole book illustrates how much fun racing could be, and Sills had that much fun. He's got so many friends scattered all across the country, and hopefully he'll be signing this at the Chili Bowl in a few weeks. I think Dave Argabright will be there with him. Joe Freeman's put out some great books with Gordon Kirby over the last few years. Wally Dallenbeck, Jim McElreath, the Bentonhausen stories, all these really good, cool books. Well, the latest one they put out from Joe Freeman, The American Racer, story of Bobby Marshman, written by Michael Artzinger, who's no longer with us. But he compiled this history of Bobby Marshman, and it's really, I mean, Marshman wasn't around very long, 4 or 5 years. Colin Chapman said he was the American Jimmy Clark. That's how good the guy was. Parnelli, A.H.A. Hurtubise, they all said this guy was as good as anybody. But there's really not much information about him. But this book's got his whole life story, and it's just a fabulous book. Of course, Joe Freeman, the work they do there, the pictures and the quality of the paper, it's a hell of a story right now, and it's on sale at coastal181.com. So if you're an IndyCar fan that wants to know about Bobby Marshman, there's where you go. Another buddy of ours, John Keogh, put a book about Art Pollard together a few years ago. Well, he's updated it, made it a little bit bigger, added a few more chapters. Art Pollard, the gentleman racer, the guy that got me started in racing, one of my pals, and it just really shows you what a guy that started so late in life like Art did, made it all the way to the Indy 500, and probably wouldn't happen anymore. Came out of the Pacific Northwest and Modifieds, and Pacific Northwest and Modifieds leads us right into Billy Foster. Now here's another guy that wasn't around very long, who had a shooting star. He was Mario Andretti's best buddy. Came out of Modifieds, up where Pollard did, up in that area with Grant King and Rollo Volstead and the boys. And Foster was a hell of a talent. Again, a lot of people don't know about him. A lot of the young fans might have maybe not even heard of Billy Foster, but he's one of those guys that had a story to tell, and he wasn't around long enough for too many people to know who he was, and just kind of a really, it's got a lot of different people that watched him race and raced against him that are really weighing in on this. Obviously, he's been gone for a long time, so I think Bob Keogh's really done a nice job of keeping the legacy going of these two guys that a lot of people maybe have heard of but don't know anything about. So Billy Foster and Art Parr, that's both at coastal181.com. One of the great things about Formula One racing, IndyCar racing, there was always a couple guys that were around forever. John Mahoney and Gene Crucian, those are the guys that have been around in IndyCar racing forever and sprint car racing, along with just there's only a few guys left like that. Jim Cheney, a guy on the West Coast, maybe the best photographer, racing photographer ever. Those are the three guys I think about. Well, when I thought about Formula One and Can-Am, I thought about Pete Byro, our buddy who lost his life last year, and he worked for Goodyear in the 60s and 70s, and he had access like nobody else in Formula One. Hence, his book F1 Mavericks. It's just an amazing book. George Levy, our buddy who's now working with the Hall of Fame, taking Ron Watson's place, they just pretty much let Pete go crazy, and it just shows you every great pair. He had angles. He was allowed to stand right on the track, get behind the scenes, became really good buddies with Mark Donahue and Dan Gurney and all the guys that, you know, were big stars in the 60s and 70s. And Pete used to put pictures up on Facebook, and there were these amazing shots that he took, like Gurney leading the charge right here, and he's right on the track, and I'm like, Byro, quit putting those pictures out for free on Facebook. You're going to have to want to sell your book sometime. Well, as fate would have it, he finally gets his book put together, him and George, and Pete dies before it gets published. But it's a phenomenal book, F1 Mavericks. It's on sale right now at Amazon.com. And if you like Formula One racing in the good old days, you'll really want to buy this, because it's just this great documentary, basically, in pictures. Besides shooting pictures, Pete went on to help Chris Pook get Long Beach started, and took I mean, he was just friends with everybody and knew everybody. Good buddies with Jay Leno. Pete was also a magician and did a lot of comedy clubs and things like that. But this is his work of art, and this is what he's most proud of, is all the great inside pictures he got of Formula One in the 60s and 70s. So pick it up right now, Amazon.com. It's on sale. Also available on Amazon.com, The Curse of the Indy 500. A lot of people maybe have not heard of this. My buddy Stan Sutton, longtime sports writer for Louisville, somebody approached him about doing the story, and the hook for the story was all the drivers in the 1958 Indianapolis 500 and the fate that ended up being their fate, which was not, I mean, a lot of guys lost their lives. So Stan just he follows that first day when Pat O'Connor lost his life, and then, you know, charts everybody after that, the Ed Elysians, and just all the guys and all the star-crossed careers of the drivers from the 1958 Indy 500. And I think it's just kind of an interesting thing. If you're an Indy 500 fan, there's a lot of cool facts in here that you really maybe don't know about, and where some of these guys came from, where they ended up going. And again, it's called The Curse of the Indy 500, 1958's Tragic Legacy by Stan Sutton. Amazon.com. Now, if you remember On Track magazine, which was a great magazine Paul Oxman put out for years, Jonathan Ingram was one of the main writers. He wrote columns, he covered sports cars, he did Indy cars. He's written books about racing for years. Probably one of the most respected guys in our profession. Well, he's come up with a book called Crash, From Senna to Earnhardt. And basically, Jonathan spent 2 or 3 years with Robert Hubbard before he died, and Jim Downing, the two guys that came up with the Hans device. And what it basically is, it's a history of how this thing got going and how hard it was fighting City Hall and getting all the guys that didn't want to have anything to do with this big, heavy thing on their neck. And Jonathan really did a good job of you know, covering all the territory and getting a hold of all the guys that were pro and con, and how they've kind of changed their mind through the years, and how many people's lives the Hans device has probably saved in the last decade. It's really, I mean, he's really gone into the depths of discovering all the hurdles they had to overcome to get people to really listen to him and say, look, this thing could save lives here. You really want to take us serious. And it took him forever to get people to take him serious. But just a really cool look at maybe one of the, other than the safer wall, one of the greatest inventions in the history of motorsports. If you know anything about motorcycle racing, you've heard the name Don Emde. E-M-D-E. He was a Daytona champion, flat tracker, road racer, did everything. Well, he's always been involved. His father got him involved in collecting motorcycle magazines and books, and Don has been on the cutting edge of a lot of different publications through the years. But this may be his pride and joy. It's called The Speed Kings. And it's basically a documentary about the rise and fall of motordrome racing. A motordrome in the early 20s, 40-degree bank tracks with motorcycles running wheel to wheel at 90 miles an hour. I mean, they were insane. They make sprint cars, midgets, you name it. Those guys, it's tame racing compared to what these guys did. And he's got Kenny Roberts, the great motorcycle champion, wrote the foreword, and he said, after reading this and looking at the pictures, these guys are crazy, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's the most, I don't even think you can, I mean, I realize people are going to say, well, they didn't know it was dangerous. They were just, you know, they were just out there making a buck or having fun or whatever. Well, I tell you what, this book, they got old newspaper clippings, and they got the old box scores and stuff, but I mean, you know, these guys running side by side in these high degree board tracks all around the country. And you know, motordrome was a big deal in a lot of cities around the country, and then they had some guys lost their lives, so a lot of tracks shut down. But you know, to think that it all started as bicycles, then it went to motorized bicycles, then it became motorcycles, and to see how the speeds increased, the danger increased obviously, but the popularity increased because they'd get, you know, 5,000 to 6,000 to 7,000 pay-ins every week to watch these guys run. And here's another great picture of these guys. Just, it's hard to imagine that, you know, they had a little leather helmet and that was it, and they're out there hanging their butt out to do this, because it's just a fabulous, fabulous book called The Speed Kings. And here's how you get it. MD Books. E-M-D-E Books.com. That's how you get it. That's the only way you can get it right now. So that's what you need to do if you're a motorcycle fan and you like daredevils, because these guys were the daredevils. I don't know how to begin other than I've never seen anything like this. And now I've been friends with Tim Considine for 35 years. Watched him on the Hardy Boys and My Three Sons growing up. He was a TV actor. Racing was his first love. Annette Funicello had a crush on him, but Tim had a DJ and he was interested in Ascot Park and racing, so women had to take a back seat to racing. And I think what I figured out about Considine a long time ago, he used to write some stories for us when I was at the Indianapolis Star. He'd come in May, we'd give him a badge, and he wrote stories, and you're thinking, this guy's a pretty good writer. Well, it turns out he's a real good writer, but what's even more unbelievable is he's a phenomenal historian. So what he's done is, he spent the last 10 years of his life working on this. It's called Twice Around the Clock. The Yanks at Le Mans. Every American driver that ever competed at Le Mans from 1923 to 59, all the way through the 70s, all the way through the 80s, there's 3 volumes. The Yanks at Le Mans. I mean, and you talk about somebody that put his heart and soul into a work. He's got every color and black and white picture probably ever taken at Le Mans, and there's 3 volumes of this, and it's just, you know, I mean, he got such great cooperation from everybody. Phil Hill before he passed away, Dan Gurney before he passed away, Carroll Shelby before he passed away, Briggs Cunningham, just all the names in Le Mans, the American names that made us in the United States pay attention and take interest in Le Mans are documented in this book. And if you like sports car racing and you like Le Mans, it's the greatest thing I've ever read. It's going to take you a while to read it because there's 3 volumes of it, and I couldn't pick them all up because I'm a scrawny little guy, so I can't pick all these up. But what you have to do is you go to Amazon right now and you can get Twice Around the Clock. But the cool thing is you better make sure your UPS guy can pump iron, because it weighs about 30 pounds. And it's not inexpensive. It's a pretty pricey thing, but this is it's worth it because it's Le Mans. It's everything about Le Mans and Americans at Le Mans, and it's documented in pictures and in writing. And Tim's writing's exceptional, and it's just you can't even hardly. It really kind of shows you too how big a deal Le Mans used to be. Then it had that period where everybody wants, yeah, and now it's making this kind of a big comeback. But when you think twice around the clock and you think about Le Mans, I hope you're smart enough to go to Amazon.com, check it out. Tim Considine, he's the author. It's a phenomenal book. It's about $300. He might give you a discount if you can name the character he played on Spin and Marty. If not, it's worth every penny. I bought a couple for Christmas presents. Had to go to the credit union to pay for it. But it's okay, because it's worth it. All right. Marshall, I apologize 1,000 times for all the edits you had to put into this tape. I hope everybody has a nice holiday. Amazon.com, Coastal181.com, DonMe.com, Jonathan Ingram, IngramBooks.com. All the different places you can go to get books. And believe me, it's great entertainment. And I hope you all appreciate what these guys have done, because when there's no cars on the track, it's always nice to stay close to racing, and these guys bring it right into your front room. So thanks for reading RACER.com. Thanks for watching our videos. Marshall Pruitt, we're trying to figure out how to keep the hamburger and french fry show together. We're still trying to get Bourdais a ride next year, because that was one of the most popular features. And have a nice holiday, folks.